can be configured to project what's happening on your table. So if you've actually got a hangout happening at this table, the person who's online will sit in on that television separately from, so we might potentially have 4 or 5 people, different faces on the television screen. That's the ideal. This is you know, where I'm trying to, what I'm aiming for. Now, I have a kind of PowerPoint tonight, which is not my usual way of doing things, because I didn't think anyone would have read the readings, possibly, or I didn't think anyone would be prepared to actually sort of just start talking in the first week about what we've read. But for me, I think an important place to start, and of course my first slide isn't that, but the first readings are about communities of practice. Now, are we familiar with the term communities of practice? Okay. Anyone want to comment on anything in the readings about communities of practice?
It's when members have a particular something or another they all value and are invested in, and they collaborate with meaning and understanding and knowledge to then build on what they already have and build on the knowledge of.
Fantastic. And, you know, it's kind of interesting because even though we're going to start with communities of practice, I don't think that this group will become a community of practice, or, you know, technically, I'm not sure we actually are. What do you think, Ted? Do we think we?
Not yet.
Not yet.
And it's hard to get them started.
Yes.
Yep.
So I kind of think of this as a learning community, and with the potential of becoming a community of practice. If we look at, okay, some education theory and some ideas, without going too deeply, about social constructivism, about what Dewey was talking about, education as experience, that there is always that sense that education is not isolated, that it's not done on its own, and that there is an interaction that happens between a student and others. So development occurs through interaction rather than through isolation. And of course, we all know about ZPD. Certainly if you've come through with a Melbourne degree, you've come through. He's taking pictures of penguins. Oh no, that's somebody's. So Ted's got pictures of penguins on his.
You actually said having issues and said the YouTube video stopped when he stopped it. The Google Plus kept live until he left the chat. Now I can't see anything. Google Hangouts where to find it.
Tell him to, if you can, tell him to go to Ning and click on the new link in the discussion. Good, great, thanks for that.
See why I said it's better to be here for the first one? Hopefully, you know, it's technically difficult, isn't it? Well,
hiccups at the first one.
Yeah, there are. So, I'm not going to ask if there's anyone here who hasn't heard of ZPD and design of proximal development, but that notion of the place where learning takes place with the assistance of a more knowledgeable other. For me, that space, that ZPD, is a dynamic place. And the notion of the more knowledgeable other is very dynamic, because at one point it's me and at the other point it's Ted, but one of us is more knowledgeable than the other at different points in time, in different aspects of our practice. And the same happens in any learning situation, as far as I'm concerned. So the notion that the teacher is the more knowledgeable other is perhaps we would like to think that's the case, and in many times, well, it is the case, but there are times when the interactions between students and student and teacher, where there is that shared ZPD, where the student is perhaps more knowledgeable in something than the teacher. Of course, using environments, online environments, can create opportunities where that dynamic relationship is perhaps made easier. I've got to remember which computer I'm using. We will be looking at a number of aspects about community throughout the subject, and for those of you who've been in my classes before, well, Seymour Papert will feature, and so will people like Mitch Resnick. Let's keep going. Now, those three notions that Wenger and Lave, I note that Etienne Wenger has sort of moved away from Lave. I don't know, is Jean Lave still alive? Or is, yeah, so they're just working separately.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so, but they came up with this community, this idea in the 90s, and it's one that has sort of been very, very popular. Based on the notion when they were investigating apprenticeship and the relationship, the apprenticeship model, and they discovered that apprenticeship, that the master and apprentice relationship was actually much bigger. Where we may not be looking at communities of practice in our classroom, and yet we may be looking at communities of practice within our school or our workplace. And there are subtle differences. So if we say that in a community of practice we have a domain, which is that defined identity shared by those people in the community, and then we have the community itself and the actual practice, you can see, well, perhaps the students in your classroom perhaps don't have that same domain. They might be a community, but they might not have the same domain or the same practice. However, we might find that the teachers in the school do. So your school might become a community of practice, or your workplace become a community of practice, but your classroom might not. Does that make sense? Anybody got any comments on that? And so an example, Trish was talking about sharing readings and commenting. One would imagine that those are education readings, probably about IB or related issues. So there we have a kind of a domain of interest, and you have a community of the school around that domain of interest, which is International Baccalaureate, and you have the members of the community. Now, typically, you would have experts sitting in the middle, and then new members join and sort of move towards that expert model, that expert place. And then they become the experts and more members. One of the criticisms of communities of practice is that, in a sense, they become tied to their own, become stagnant, because that move to becoming expert, in a sense, isn't generating new thought or new ideas. What do you reckon, Ted?
Yes, I mean, the hard part is to actually get your head around the notion of community as being more difficult to frame up, because it requires a stronger relationship, and these theories actually were developed around workplace settings rather than school settings. So often we've got, especially in the online environment, we've got what are called loose kind of network connections. These aren't necessarily starting up as strong communities. We might rely upon the information within them and try and use the notions of communities of practice, but they're more likely just communities of learning, or more likely they're not conforming exactly to the same notions of expert. The expert may shift, There may actually be different ways that that community draws resources. It may not always draw resources from itself, and there may be other forms of expertise and forms of authority that are available to that kind of more school or academic-oriented community of practice or community of inquiry or learning.
So really, I mean, that's the example there. Ted's given the difference between a classroom and the teachers, or perhaps your clients and the employees. So the sense that we may not be looking at creating communities of practice in the things in our projects that we build, but that doesn't matter. I'm introducing the term communities of practice because it's a term that is very, very strongly situated in the literature, and one that you will, is used, and often I think used incorrectly, or a bit too broadly. So just be aware of this notion of community of practice, but that we have many, many, many other kinds of communities that you can strive to create and that we create here. We may not have the community of practice here because it might be difficult to define our domain of interest. It may not be shared because you have different workplaces, different learning area disciplines. I'm now taking that everyone in the room pretty well is school-based. So even though we might all be teachers, we still have different domains of interest, and we may become shared, but that's not what's brought us together. Of course, we do have the notion that there are many, many, many communities of practice. I'm not going to go to all of these. I will put this link up just because there's a number of links on there which are worth investigating. But forums, they've been around for a long, long time, and they kind of got sort of a bit passé, didn't they? But they're still absolutely everywhere. Does anyone been to, was it Whirlpool Forum? It's like, whenever anything goes wrong with something, with an appliance, or you say, well, I wonder why my radio in my car isn't working. You put that question into Google, and inevitably you'll come up with Whirlpool Forum or whatever car name you drive, its forum of users. So we can see these forums as examples, in a sense, of communities of practice. PHPB is a forum software, and they have a forum about forums. I just thought I'd like that kind of recursiveness. So you would see vBulletin and PHPB are sort of basically the two big forum hosters. Think about TripAdvisor. Is it a community of practice? It's probably a community of interest. But, who goes anywhere without looking at TripAdvisor? The notion of wikis is interesting as well. I do refer to an article called Wikis in Schools as one of the readings. It's a few years old, and it's no longer available. I couldn't find it online, so I've included the PDF. When the last Conservative government came in the UK, they closed down a number of rather useful research organisations, and the links, but everything was just deleted. So that's a sad time. But never mind. Wikipedia as a community of practice. The notion of wikis. Has anyone ever used the wiki? Yeah, in a school or other situation?
No,
Used it with your class, and how effectively?
quite well. It was based on a specific project, so we had an answer room. This is a few years ago now, and so I was just filling around that particular project and used that as a sort of way. But as the project kind of went through its life, it was about 6 months.
And were people just contributing, or were they editing each other's contributions?
At the time, they were just contributing, but then we would sit within the classroom and go through and discuss a lot of what was being said. So some of them contribute outcomes to that one also. And we come to
Okay, we might come back to the notion of wikis and that sense of the editability of wikis. It doesn't seem that anybody is concerned at all about editing what's on Wikipedia, but the notion of editing what other people have published in a school environment or in a workplace environment is a little more challenging. And I think that's an interesting, in one ways, using wikis as communities is a bit difficult, whereas Wikipedia is this fantastic notion of what community can look like. Okay, I won't. It's kind of the notion here. If you say in here, the Wenger talks about the duality of participation and reification, and in a sense, Wikipedia or the wiki itself becomes both of those things because it is the object of the community as well as the community, if you like. But let's not get too bogged down with theoretical considerations at this stage. What do you reckon, Ted?
Well, I'd love to get bogged down in it, but the example of Wikipedia is a very interesting example, I think, because it's much more diverse. The focus of the practice is often around a particular topic within Wikipedia. It's not Wikipedia itself, it's the subject of that topic, and people take a personal interest in that topic and tend to obviously maintain the kind of the detail that's within that topic, not necessarily over the whole of Wikipedia. But Wikipedia is a good example of a community practice where people are contributing to a focused area. They've got a very strong commitment to a particular topic, and they maintain that that topic as well as they can within the limits of what Wikipedia can do. And that's, I think, what you find in a school setting is why wikis sometimes are not always able to sort of break through into that kind of process, is that I think in Australia, for example, people are loath to edit other people's work, and they find it's kind of not as strong a connection into the focus, even if it is a focused wiki, unless they get a lot more kind of comfortable with the wiki process and find out that they can roll back and so forth. That requires a little bit more knowledge, a little bit more expertise, and that's what those Wikipedia sort of fanatics have actually got. Their focus is much more strongly in usually just a single topic rather than the totality. Obviously, there is people in Wikipedia who are much more interested in the totality of the environment, but the reality is most of the community that's contributing to Wikipedia is contributing on one topic only.
Very interesting. I hadn't even thought of that component. Mm-hmm. So we've got a Minecraft wiki and World of Warcraft wikis.
And I think both of those would be communities of practice. Okay. Yeah.
There you go.
I think those two are actually communities.
See, no, I think they are, absolutely.
Yeah.
Not having young children, I need to go and start playing Minecraft and World of Warcraft. Mostly adults, okay.
On the chat, Linda was just very active and sometimes there's that concern of things possibly being wrong and having that ability to then post that information to others.
Yep.
think that's where she's headed.
Yeah, I think in Wikipedia the editorial committee is huge and on the ball, isn't it? I mean, because the editorial committee is the user.
But this is, I mean, if I can just say, as a criticism of the process of community and/or sourcing information from a community, there is a criticism that's legitimately made that the people in that community can actually create a kind of verification, authentication of something that may actually be wrong. It's not necessarily the case that everything that's done is incredibly accurate in a wiki, or that it can't go astray. It can go astray. It's not necessarily the case that even the people that maintain a particular subject topic inside Wikipedia, for example, which is monitored, and there are all sorts of checks and balances in there, sometimes even the information, if it's particularly kind of focused information, could actually not be correct. And it could be disputed, or it could be open to other interpretations. She's quite right. Just because it's a wiki and we're getting a group kind of knowledge or crowdsourced information, it doesn't necessarily mean that its information is absolutely accurate. It's certainly the case, though, it can self-reinforce. And so that is actually a learning thing. It's learning the wrong thing, perhaps, but it is still a learning practice. It's a learning involvement. And the more focused it is, I think the stronger the community is created and the closer we are to a community of practice. So things like World of Warcraft and Minecraft, those people are very focused on getting those tools to work and sharing ideas and developing the ways in which they do actually function. So they are a community of practice, yes. Clearly. It certainly doesn't mean, though, that everything is absolutely accurate in their wikis.
No, but certainly that sense of those experts and that the idea of how does one become expert in those communities through the numbers of posts and the numbers of sort of likes and the expertise that is built up in there.
You could say it's a democratic outcome rather than necessarily. What is absolutely true is that it's functional. It does actually work. It gets an outcome, and it does create learning for the community. So the important thing, I suppose, we're interested in is learning. Now, clearly, we want good learning, but it's not always the case that a group is going to come up with exactly an agreeable kind of outcome for everyone. It's not going to be the same for everyone.
Wow. Okay. We will be looking, and I'm not going to go into too much detail now because these are the things that we are going to cover through the semester. Ideas of distributed cognition, so that, in a sense, the learning is shared, distributed across the group, which perhaps leads us to increased cognition as a group and as an individual. So, sorry, I'll try not to hit that thing. So that we've got that notion of not just learning for the individual, but learning for the group, which we've already talked about in the World of Warcraft kind of notion.
And again, if I just can step in, I mean,
please do.
I quite like the fact of it, the notion of where Lav and Wenger started this. They started it in workplaces, and you often hear the notions of a learning organisation, an organisation which is contributing to the learning of the overall workplace. Not everyone in an organisation knows everything. You need the whole organisation to be functioning as a unit, if you like, for it to function well. And that's why sometimes workplaces are a better example of a kind of a functioning community of practice using their model. They have obviously split them. Now they're both working on two different areas. So Love and Wenger are actually working on different topics at the moment. But the reality is they are talking more closely, I suppose, about the kinds of things that we're interested in, the kind of learning communities rather than just the communities of practice. But I think communities of practice is a very functional idea that we can see around us all the time, and we can try and draw upon some of the things that those communities do actually use to get them to function. But just be careful, you don't expect them to just sort of blossom just because you start, you know, a wiki, or you just start to try and use that theory. It's not always going to be the case that they function perfectly without some long-term kind of involvement on a particular focus, I think.
Yeah. Oh, I should have been sharing the slides, but
that's what I was thinking too. Unfortunately, we can do that next time.
We can do. Well, I won't have slides next time.
Oh, okay.
Slides are a rarity here, I hope. Now, of course, then the notion of community goes. We move away from community of practice, and the idea of what learning can occur in online communities. Even things like TED Talks, which, I don't know, is it a community, or do we sort of feel a sense of belonging to, I know Anne does, to things like TED Talks or the MIT world? I mean, we've all spent too many hours listening to TED Talks, haven't we? Watching TED Talks, getting absorbed by this access to the world's leading thinkers and talkers, and so I kind of consider that notion of distributed intelligence as something that's made very, very real and accessible through technologies. So we moved away from the community of practice into the notion of learning networks and learning community that perhaps we can be a member of without actually making a contribution to, except by turning up to. Because the contribution that we make to TED is to watch it. But if nobody watched it, I wonder, would they still be there? So, you know, that's just another pertinent thing to say. Yeah.
Just on that, sort of do contribute to the
Absolutely.
we're actually passing on that. So it's all contribution, but
So the act of
sharing of those, because you know, you get the top 10 TED Talks, people can use that as an input, that can be the community has recognised the and shared.
yes, absolutely. The sharing of the net of it's that, yeah, the sharing of the talk and the popularity of the talk, and you can comment as well, can't you? Yeah. So, you know, the comments are possibly a contribution to that community.
They've also got a TED
Yeah,
now.
Yeah.
that through that you actually get
More
that.
based for schools and students and stuff like that, where there's actually discussions and that will give much more of that.
Okay.
If I could just try on that too, I think that the additional thing, apart from the fact that there are communities that are working in relationship to that in a social way, I think what Nick was saying earlier was that one of the reasons why they do actually form a process of learning or a distributed learning is mostly because of the technology. The network technology that enables TED Talks to work is really a defining element, as well as the social aspects, but the interaction aspects and the sharing of the different links and so forth, and the discussion. But the thing that is also fundamental is that the network technology that enabled that to be shared is also a contributing factor in why it actually works, why that allows for some distributed knowledge across the network. Yeah.
It's not possible to read this slide because it's just a description, but I will post the slide, and I couldn't get to the article either anymore because it's rather old, but I like the slide because it creates a sort of number of paths that we can look at what community learning communities might look like. So with a main word, a descriptive word, and then in the box you can see it, you know, pick your own heading if you like. So a learning city, a learning region, a learning community is any group of people and then pick the word. And I kind of think that's a really useful graphic. I'll make sure it's on the Ning, and apologies to those people who are listening and wondering what the hell I'm talking about. I meant to stream share this with you as we went, but never mind. We'll do that next time, and I'll make sure that that slide in particular is available. That graphic is available because I think it's very useful, and you can probably look at it and see, oh, that's where I fit. That's where my project might fit. That's where I may be writing my essay about. I have some more links there that I will allow you to investigate on your own. It's interesting, the Victorian Government Education website now is talking about Victoria as a learning community. It's only been like that for what, 12 months or so? Is it a bit older? Nobody. Come on, you all go to the Victorian Education website frequently, don't you? All right. Okay. Anyway, you might need to. You might need to. There are changes afoot. Anyway, have a look at how the Education Department, the state government, looks at itself as the state as a learning community, and what that might mean in terms of educational approaches, and within that, where the digital fits. Because part of Victoria as a learning community is a digital learning strategy, which sits there as well, and I think is essential to get a grasp of what we're talking about in this subject. Certainly the practical application of digital technologies and the sense of what those networks and social learning happens will be available in there as well. Now, the open source solutions to community is one thing, but the notion of open source communities as themselves as these incredible places which are communities of practice and communities of sharing. So you get these two things, aren't they, Ted? That we know about open source, don't we? Software that's made not necessarily free, often free, where the code is open, so you can actually go inside it and develop it if you know how. So you've probably all used, what's some great open source examples?
Well, Google Plus is
Google
open.
Plus.
Yeah. It's more difficult than most. I'm just trying to think of Moodle is open source, and you can add to that community, and I would say that is a community of practice for our learning management system. We use a different one here, which is a closed source Blackboard system, but the open source system that many universities use is Moodle, and different universities contribute to the development of Moodle, and individuals can contribute to it because they can download the code and add things to it, improve it, and as a community of practice, it's kind of an interesting group. As an open source community, they are clearly working on developing the software, and that's the focus of that practice. They're developing Moodle.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in all of the open source communities, there is that sense of certain focused practice, which is the software program, but there's also a greater sense of sort of philanthropy and common good because it's open and shared. The software is often shared or very, very cheap, so you're paying for some development, but the notion is that the internet and cyberspace and technology should be free and open and available rather than corporatized and commercial and locked down. So I won't even talk about Apple at this stage. But
no, Apple's a different scenario again, but again, there is a community of practice even within Apple, but it's not open source, that's for sure.
So, please look at these sites. I'm going to show you one or two. everybody's been to c12, haven't you, if you're a teacher? c12? You're all familiar with c12? Okay, good. I'm not sure if that's a community, but it's shared resources. The example from Graz Technical University is something I saw at a conference a couple of years ago, and I felt so jealous and so sort of, well, envious of the way they were doing. The whole university operates in a sort of community, an online community environment with open source software and a very different approach to what we have here at Melbourne in terms of the openness of the network to its students. And of course I could go into why we have such a closed system, but in your schools you will have closed systems, and there are many, many reasons of security, reasons of safety, protection of data, the protection of privacy out of student information. But, you know, organisations make choices based on many different things, don't they? And so it goes. These things may be useful for you to consider in the developments of your projects too. Certainly Edmodo, which I didn't put up here, but EduBlogs and Blogger. You know, Google has its own blog about Google, which is kind of exciting. I think I've been there once. I went there today, but it's, you know, this notion that well, no thought goes unblogged by anybody in many cases, but certainly blogs are useful starting points. But does a blog constitute a community? Not necessarily. Any thoughts?
I think it depends on the interaction.
Depend.
Very much because since we are talking about community, because of blog, usually is you can have a person just writing.
Yep.
Yeah, but if there's no interaction, then it's not considered community.
No, I mean a blog is really one person's thoughts, one person's journal of life with comments. Now, one of the reasons I chose Ning as my platform was that it is multiple blogs connected, so that we could we can have that opportunity to contribute rather than just listen to me, as it were, which is what you're doing tonight. I'm sorry, but that's okay. So, you know, blogging is there may be communities that exist around blogs. And certainly the whole thing about following. So the next slide I'm going to go to is kind of a list of blogs, and people follow each other's contributions to blogs. And of course, through things like Twitter, we can tweet and blog at the same time. So, you know, I can send out some tiny little message on Twitter that's related to a more lengthy post that I've done on my blog, and my community of followers will be able to make some contribution and then retweet that, and then I will of course be following a whole lot of people, and so it goes. So, but there's potential for community around blogs, but whether blogs are themselves a community, I think is sort of certainly questionable a couple of years ago, but the interactions have changed, haven't they, Ted?
Well, yes, I think Twitter's, I mean, it's called microblogging. It's very similar to Edmodo. And because of the fact that you are actually setting up your own personal set of people that you follow, and those people may actually respond back by following you, there is a pretty strong likelihood in things like Twitter, if you engage with that kind of community, you will be setting up a community practice. It's one of those things that is more emergent than if you just went straight to EduBlogs, for example, and set up your own account. It's more likely you'll be doing what Nick said, that or what we've just heard about here, is that you'll be doing a private kind of conversation which other people can contribute to, and it might expand, and then you might get a series of followers, and then you might follow them, and there may be, and I've seen lots of blogs that are around the same issue or often have the same kind of topics running in their different blog spaces, and they're all linked. The beauty is that it's possible through a network environment to start to set up these communities of practice or learning or whatever via the linking structure. But a single blog by itself would be difficult as a community. You can open it up and have more than one contributor, clearly, and that's sort of like, I suppose, what you're doing with the microblogging Twitter or Edmodo kind of sites. But the reality is that most blogs in the primary setup are just for one person's contribution and the comments from others.
How do people know that there's you know how when there's unrest somewhere and for a miracle someone gets something out for a blog, how do these people know that they're doing that?
Okay. The question here is really, how does the world, or how does anybody know when somebody's actually blogged or tweeted? And it's a really good question. There are a couple of answers. People, I don't know how it starts. It starts by following. Twitter is easier because you can get Twitter aggregators, so you can watch streams of tweets happening. So you can you put in hashtags and you can follow conversations. How does one become a popular blogger? I don't know. Maybe we could discover that, because I need to become one.
Well, I mean, there's any number of ways. So if you joined the EduBlogs community, it's got its own kind of, it will show you the most recent posts. The same with the Google Blogger site or Blogspot will actually show you recent posts as they arrive in the top part of your file. But there is still a site, I think, called Technorati, which does aggregate almost every blog that exists, and will start to do what Twitter does. That is, sort of, if there is a common sort of theme or a common sort of a topic that's tagged, that will come to the top, and you'll start to see those common. So if a lot of people start blogging on a single topic, often it will start to appear in other people's blogs, and then that's how it sort of expands. It's kind of a merging, kind of crowdsourcing, kind of, it's just numbers. It's just the fact of popularity. Generally, things are done through Twitter as well as blogs. Just to get a message out, you start with Twitter, and then you direct people to the blog, which will have the detailed information, maybe videos and other material as well.
It's also about your learning networks. So as you create a network, you start by tweeting. You make a tweet, or you look at somebody's blog. You join a professional learning network or a personal learning network. Working through Twitter is a really, or LinkedIn. Is everyone in LinkedIn here? Yeah, I'm a very bad LinkedIn person. I've got about 400 unread emails in LinkedIn. I think I need to go through those. But by creating those networks, you become a person in LinkedIn, and then people want to be your, what do they call it in LinkedIn? Connection, professional, and you're invited to join professional networks in LinkedIn. You then join those, and then it becomes this sort of, you become part of that community, and a member in there will say, they'll link from their blog, oh, I've just done a so-and-so and so-and-so, bang, it goes to the people in their network. So one can live in complete isolation and just take sort of what Ted's saying, the aggregation, the most popular blogs, the most number of hits, or one can be more active and say, okay, I'm going to follow these people on Twitter, I'm going to connect to these people in LinkedIn or in Google Plus or in any number of places. One of those places, he says with a beautiful segue, is the Digital Learning and Teaching Victoria Professional Association. I'm very pleased this year I can actually spruik this association because it is the amalgamation of two associations. So in the past I would have had to and I was involved in one of them, not the other. So it wouldn't be fair for me to promote one without promoting the other. But now they're both joined together, it becomes easy for me to promote, or at least make people aware of this organisation, which is a teacher professional association for the use of digital technologies. The link that I have there is basically to the DLTV website, but what they've done is exactly the kinds of things that we were talking about, in a sense, is an aggregation of education blogs. So, I mean, it's not really, why isn't it?
Oh, you're not connected unless you've got the wireless.
Oh, yeah, I think I've got wireless, but
Right.
who knows. Anyway, one can do that at one's own. Yeah, I won't do it now anyway, because the people online will miss that. But please, I'm going to post that slide, that PowerPoint. All the links are live, and I would recommend that in terms of, especially if you're new to the world of technology and digital communities, places like DLTV are a good place to start looking, because you can connect straight away to a number of educators who are involved in this sense of community. I was really pleased today when I had a look. One of my former students, a graduate of the MTeach program, is up there with heaps and heaps of blogs and all this kind of thing, so it's nice to see. Now, I think I've spoken enough for tonight. Have you, Ted?
Yep.
Ted has. Just a little chaotic tonight. It's never normally chaotic in my classes, is it, Anne? No. It's never chaotic, is it? No answer there. So, we've been through some ideas. We've looked at assessment. If you have questions, specific questions about assessment, talk to us now, or send us emails, and we'll get back to you straight away with what we expect. I would like you to let me know before class if you're going to be online, so that we can then set up much easier if we can have it set up in advance and say, bang, that's where the Ning's going to be, where the Hangout is, and then we can even spread it out amongst tables so we can have some meaningful discussions. Any general questions? What am I expecting to see? I would like to see, in terms of comments, anything you like. You know, I found this really interesting because most of the interactions about the readings I will hope will happen here. So if you're thinking about leading a readings group, thinking about something that you can do to engage everybody in the room with the ideas that are in the readings, one perhaps, or of the readings, because there's usually two. Commenting, I think, intelligent but not too long, unless you get excited by it, so that we can then have some comments coming backwards and forwards. The Ning will take shape a little slowly. I find that Ted and my role will be very great at the start and then become less and less. So, but please comment and respond to each other's comments. I notice some people are friends with each other, and I don't think I'm a friend with anyone. I don't know why. Never mind. We'll get there. You seem to be friends with everybody, Ted. Yeah. So, I don't know if that's answered you. Just start commenting on the readings, and hopefully people will respond. You can set up groups of your own. There's a forum there if you wish. Does anybody think they're going to be interested in leading readings next week? Don't have to answer now, but post it up there soon, please. And then it's over and done with, and you feel really good. Someone's got to go first.
Yeah.
I didn't understand when you put the question up there.
Mm-hmm.
Were you able to type up there?
Yep.
Or you send you an email
No, you can type. No, that's quite all right. Oh, there's DLTV right there. In here, in the Ning, when you go to the sign-ups under schedule there.
Yeah,
So,
and then when you click on sign up, you see what that is there.
yep.
Where do you, is it under options?
Options, edit.
Right, and when you edit, that allow you to type somewhere.
It certainly will. Bang, opens up here, and you'll put your name, who's going to do it, and who's attending online.
Right, so can I ask you?
Yep.
Be more than likely, someone, they already have their names down, page 2.
Yep.
Right, and if I put my name with them,
Yes.
does that mean we start communicating, or does that mean because their names are there, that I look for another one? So by some miracle, they're all gone.
No,
Does that mean
that
that
you don't have to bother. Yep, you can do what you like. I would suggest a communication with the people who are doing it. I think sort of 3 is probably enough, but you know it may be 4. It doesn't matter. I don't want to make hard and fast rules here.
Okay, and is the communication, when you click on their little square,
Yep.
it comes up add a comment,
Yep,
is that the communication?
that will get through to them straight away, as long as you've all got your stuff ready so that you can receive comments. Okay, it's very simple, I think.
Just as another clue that might be helpful, I'm not saying you have to do this, but if you're thinking about commenting just broadly, or even specifically if you're going to lead a reading, sometimes to get people sort of challenged a bit, it's just a matter, and if a comment is a question, it's much more likely to provoke a response in terms of another comment. So rather than make a definitive statement that can't be challenged, you make a statement that is a question or opens up a kind of discussion. It may be a statement, or it may be a proposition, or it may be a question that you're trying to engage with the rest of us to see whether you can get some discussion going. So it's just a good idea to have that in the back of your mind, and if you're leading a discussion, I think it'd be great if you had a series of questions. You may know the answers to some of them. It's not really important, but if you don't know the answers, it's even better. But you can get a little bit more of that community engagement of contributing to your learning if other people respond to questions that you've got. So that's just another way of commenting. It doesn't always have to be that you notice something really important that you agree with. It may be something that you are very doubtful of and or want to confirm, or you're tentative about, and you're asking a question.
Yes? Under the readings, yep, do it on the reading page. That way it keeps it. It'll appear elsewhere as well, but do it if you're going to make a comment about readings. Do it under the readings, and if you feel brave enough to lead a reading, pop your name in as soon as possible. And are you talking about the readings sign-up sheet? So under the schedule, it says sign up, and then you'll see if you click edit, where does it say? Readings leaders. Oh look, I got one already. Belinda, social capital and community, she's doing it already. So it's happening already. Oh look, I'm getting an email.
Belinda might be online, I think.
I think Belinda is.
Yeah.
Beauty.
Yeah.
So you put it somewhere. If it's in the wrong place, I can clean it up. It's no drama. Yep. So social capital and community building. We're talking about knowledge building networks, and Belinda's already said she's going to like to have a go at leading that online. How great. Okay. Okay. Oh, okay. I didn't. Yes. Okay. I'll have to. I haven't looked at it on my iPad. I better have a look because I don't use my iPad very often. I'll see. Who's got a Samsung? No? No. Yes. Okay, all right.
One other thing.
Yes.
Is there a word-
Update. It says update,
Oh, right.
and that's the same as save. So, Emma, did you have...
Yeah, the 10% is that based on our contribution to the meetings and the forum?
Yes. Mostly to the NIM. Okay? So, the 10% contribution is to the community. So, by posting into the NIM, by making comments, you'll get 10%. Okay? All right. I think we've reached a logical conclusion. I hope this hasn't been too chaotic, and I hope you will come back next week. Otherwise, I'll be in trouble. But no, trust me, it works. We'll get over the technical hitches. We never know until we get into the room exactly what's going to happen when. So thank you, and we shall see you all either online or here next week. Stop broadcast.